Hello everyone, I'm Phil Prince in San Jose, California, and I'm delighted to have with me today Butterfly Boucher from Nashville via Skype. She's an amazingly talented singer-songwriter. For those of you who don't know about her, she was born and raised in Australia, the middle daughter of 7 children. About a dozen years ago, she moved to Nashville and recorded her debut album called Flutterby for A&M Records, and it was very well received. She toured the U.S. with Sarah McLachlan, did a duet with David Bowie for the Shrek 2 soundtrack, and so quite an auspicious beginning. And then the musical world stepped in, and things didn't go quite so smoothly for her second album. And after some disagreements and frustration with her label, Butterfly released her last 2 albums, being Scary Fragile in 2009 and her self-titled Butterfly Boucher album in 2012 independently. She also plays bass in a power trio called Elle Macho with David Mead and Lindsay Jamieson. And she recently re-recorded her debut album to celebrate the 10th anniversary. It's called Happy Birthday Flutterby and is now available digitally via Amazon and iTunes and all those kind of outlets. So, hello, Butterfly Boucher. Thanks so much for talking with us.
Oh, my pleasure to be here. I'm exhausted just hearing what...
Yeah, did I get most of it right?
My life in review.
Was it most of that accurate, I hope?
It was. You know, you've got the details down for sure.
So, the inevitable first question, why re-record your debut album?
It does seem odd, doesn't it? Honestly, there were a couple of reasons. The main one being that album was just a really special album to me, and I feel like I actually feel like I'm far enough removed from it since it's been like 10 years that I can almost talk about it like somebody else did it, you know, like it was a different artist. It was it turned out to be a really special album. You know, it didn't win a Grammy. It didn't get that far. And, you know, all the expectations that the people that I worked with and myself had for that, like you said, it didn't pan out the way we thought it would. But then nothing really does from my experience. But, you know, over the years, most of the people that come up to me at shows or you know, recognize me, which it doesn't happen that often, but if they do, it's generally Flutterby that they bring up in conversation as being the album that you know, they knew and moved them in some way. So I don't know, it occurred to me that it was its 10th year anniversary last year, and I just had this kind of desire to acknowledge it, you know, and do something special. And in a moment of kind of like just, you know, looking back over those 10 years and just being really grateful for the people and the fans that have stuck by me for all that time, and the new fans too. But it really is, you know, like, it doesn't matter how much music I do and if it's good or not. If it's not being heard by people and loved by them and part of their life, then it's, you know, it feels like a waste of time. So I wanted to do something to kind of show my gratitude to my fans and just something joyful and fun. And so yeah, this time around I got all my friends, like all of the people that I've met in the last 10 years since that album, musicians to donate their time and play on it. Some of whom were like massive fans of the album, so they were more than happy to do it, which I just kind of got lucky on that. So yeah, I did it for fun and I did it for the fans. I also did the pledge. I did it through the pledge campaign thing. To also just kind of make it a more community thing, you know, bring everybody in on it. Yeah.
So let me ask you, on your three albums, you played most all the parts, put it together yourself, and I would guess you're somewhat of a perfectionist in doing that kind of work. And so for Happy Birthday Flutterby, you have close to, I think, 30 musicians playing on there. So Was it hard to let go of your songs in a certain way and allow others to help animate them for the new album?
Well, it was. I actually didn't find it hard at all. And I think maybe it is that thing that I just mentioned before, that it's been so long, it's been 10 years, that there's a distance between those songs and
that Butterfly Boucher.
Yeah, the younger me. But also the other thing was, I knew that I kind of wanted to be open to it sounding different, because I didn't really want to make the same album and try to make it sound exactly the same. Like, that wasn't the idea. It was just to kind of like re-record them. And I was kind of hoping to, you know, hoping that by using my friends, using them, but working with them, that they would influence a new sound on these songs. And that's what would set it apart from the first album. And I also feel like, you know, I was lucky with this first album. I actually recorded it before a record label was involved, which gave me tons of freedom. I made the exact album that I had in my head, and nobody was pulling me around saying, no, it needs to be more, you know, commercial here, or the guitar solo, saxophone is apparently in, so you should do that. I didn't have anybody telling me that stuff. I was just making the album as it flowed out of me. And so yeah, there was no reason to do that again. So I enjoy working with other musicians. Honestly, the main reason I've ended up playing stuff on so much on my albums is because it's just easier that way, and it's not as expensive. And I'm just there, you know. It's like, I'm writing a song, I need to record it. Oh, it needs a bass, so I'll play bass. Oh, it kind of needs some keyboards, so, you know, I just do it. It's always been that way, and that's probably the reason why I learned all those instruments. It was just out of a necessity, because somebody needed to play them, and yeah, I wanted to. So.
Well, you've done a fine job.
When it doesn't rain, it snows. Yeah, the cookie crumbles, but in whose hand? All things said and all things done. Life is short. Oh, I am young, but I have aged. I've waited long to seize the day. All things said and plenty done. Life is short.
So the first of your promotional videos for Happy Birthday Flutterby shows Life is Short being recorded in the studio, the basic tracks of that. So is that the way all the songs were put together, by doing a live in the studio recording of the basic tracks?
Yeah, that's exactly how I started off with. I really was trying, and I tried to get as much as possible on those days. And my hope was to not do many overdubs, to not layer it too much. And I really didn't want it to sound overly produced. I wanted to sound pretty organic and real. So I didn't do a ton of editing, but it ended up being more work than I had anticipated. But yeah, we got the basic tracks. I had 4 days in a studio to record. We recorded it in the studio that I did the original Flutterby in. So it was kind of like a blast from the past moment. And so I had a different bunch of musicians come in every day, and we would record 3 songs. That was, we had a day to get 3 songs. The first day I had a string section come in. So I had 2 violinists and a cellist, and we would triple track that. We triple tracked it on some, so it sounded more like a string section. And then other ones like Drift On, where it's a little bit more broken down, I want it to feel more like a quartet. So, and a little bit more like, has a bit more character when it's just one, you know, played once. So we did that, which was exciting because I haven't done a ton of work with real string players, and I always have wanted to. So I was really lucky that Eleanor, who arranged all the strings and played second violin, she offered to do, you know, arrangements for 5 of the songs. It was like a dream. I was like, yes, please. So they came in and we did a day of strings. Yeah, and then the next 3 days were bands. We came in with different rhythm sections and all kinds of things.
Sounds great. I mean, I also wanted to ask you about the whole, so you raised the funds for this project through a Pledge Music campaign. How was that whole experience for you?
The Pledge campaign, it was great. It was a lot of work. In some ways, it was just as big of a job or task as making the album. And I'm partly because I am a perfectionist, as you suspected. And I didn't want to do it half-heartedly and, you know, and do the Pledge campaign and say, hey, I want to let you in on the process and then not follow through, which is quite easy to do because you're so distracted with the actual album that you're making. It's hard to also, it's hard to take a break and go, we need to make, you know, do some footage and explain what's happening and stuff like that. So I was lucky that I had Dawson Wells, who was my manager at the time as well, who happens to be a great videographer and editor. So I scored on that. But it was a very big undertaking, and fulfilling it was even harder. It was harder than I expected. But as a whole, it was an amazing experience. It might be a while before I do it again, just because I may need to, like, figure out what I was good at, wasn't. But I really, in terms of an emotional level, what I had hoped, which was I wanted it to be a genuine connection, and to people to share stories about what Flutterby has meant to them, and me too as well, and talk about some of the stories around the time that Flutterby came out, and even, you know, about random things that happened between me and the record label, and, you know, some of the ugly stuff as well as the good stuff. The next video actually that I'm about to release has a release with an interview with Sarah McLachlan, who talks about basically walking up to the president of my label at the time and telling him what for, and that he shouldn't mess this up because Butterfly is really talented and it's a great album. In a, you know, a few.
Well, that's helpful.
You said that, yeah. But it was great in terms of connecting and hearing people's stories about what that album meant to them. I kind of said this in an interview recently that it turned out to be quite an emotional project, re-recording the album more so than I had thought. And some of that is just, you know, record label stuff that and expectations and dreams that didn't quite make to where I thought they were going to go, and then the reality of where I am now, and like still wanting to do music, and how do you do that, and how do you make a living, and how do you still enjoy it and not get bitter by the process and knowing too much about the industry. But receiving letters from fans through the Pledge campaign about what Flutterby meant to them, it just made me realize that, you know, it was absolutely worth it. The last 10, 12 years of hard work and good times and bad times, it was actually worth it. And if I stand back and look at the bigger picture, all I've ever wanted to do was, well, make music and for that music to inspire people and touch them and be a part of their lives. And those emails just confirmed that that is what happened, and that I have done that, and I should be happy with that, and I am.
Never leave your heart. Never leave your heart alone. Run for shelter, an umbrella. Fights the rain, not the wind. And I'd be silly to start preaching, 'cause I don't know which point to make. The more to the story goes, never leave your heart in a box, locked up with cold, cold eyes. Never leave your heart. Never leave your heart alone.
Say, I wanted to ask you about songwriting for a minute, because when you listen to your secret tapes, you're, working very hard, experimenting with sounds and playing all the different instruments, trying to put the song together. More recently, you've co-written songs with people like Missy Higgins and Katie Herzig, and I assume with David Mead and Lindsay Jamieson for Elle Macho. So how is that different, doing composing or creating a song with other people?
That's a good question. Because even writing, like each time you write with somebody different, it's always even that is a different experience from the next person, so every song is very different. I think the songs that I write by myself take a lot longer, just because I stew on them a lot longer, and it is coming usually from a very personal part, which you tend to not. I mean, you can, if you're really comfortable with somebody you're co-writing, you'll write something personal. But I think it goes on a different level when you're writing by yourself. I don't know. I'd be interested to know if anybody notices when there's a song that I've written completely by myself, or if there's a song that I've co-written, and if they can tell the difference. But lately, I've been doing a lot more co-writing. And I enjoy the co-writing, just because by the nature of somebody else being in the room and throwing out ideas, there's this momentum of like moving forward and chipping away at lyrics, which, when it's just you, it's kind of like when you don't have an idea, you don't have an idea. It stops until you pick it up again. So I really enjoy both. I really feel like it works well for me to have both of those kind of experiences of making time to just write by myself, and then also writing with others. And when you're writing with others, you learn things, which is, I guess you do when you write by yourself, but it feels more obvious, like you just pick up on little tricks of the trade that they might have, or I don't know, I really enjoy both.
So in the past few years, besides recording and releasing 2 Butterfly Boucher albums and a El Macho album, you co-produced Missy Higgins' album and toured as a bass player and backup vocalist with Missy Sarah McLachlan and Katie Herzig, making a good case for the hardest working woman in showbiz. It does seem like this year you're staying a little closer to home and taking things a little slower. And so I was wondering, was that an intentional deceleration, if that's a word?
Yeah. Yeah, it was intentional, and it was also just I had kind of reached a point after 2012, after, like you said, releasing my album. And while I was making that album, I was touring with Sarah McLachlan. So it was like anytime I came home from my supposed days off, I was in the studio working on my album. And then during that process, I took on Missy Higgins' album as well. So it was kind of all in, rolled up into one for that year. And then the next year was really promoting my album and also promoting Missy's. So yeah, after about, that would have been about 2.5 years of pretty full on, just being productive and touring, I was pretty burnt. So 2003, I got off the road, and 2013. And I sat down with my manager, and he was like, "Well, should we start talking about scheduling some tours for this year?" And I just started shaking. So, and I couldn't even fathom packing my bag again. And so it was a mixture of, it was a decision, but it was also my body I just couldn't do it. My brain, I'd burnt myself out. And it was great. The touring was fantastic, and I'm so glad I did it. But yeah, I can't keep that up. And I kind of want to know what's next, I don't want to tour for the rest of my life that hard and that hardcore. Because I just physically can't do it. But I love to perform. So, I just got to figure out, I think it's always the case. There's always a balance. And I've always, I would like to go on to do more production stuff. And I also miss being home, because when you're home, when opportunities come up to write a song for maybe TV or film or a commercial, you're there, and I have a home studio, so it's very easy for me to jump on it and write a song and produce it up in what usually it's like you have 2 days to do it. And I hadn't been able to do that for years because I was on the road, and you don't have the studio or the equipment and all the headspace, honestly. So I've really enjoyed that, being home, and just any of those small little challenges that come along, I can jump on them and write a song, and just co-writing with different people that are in town. And because my schedule isn't so like chock-a-block full of touring, I've actually got windows to set up co-writes with people, and just get better at that. And I write once a week with El Macho in the basement that we set up into a rehearsal studio. And yeah, it's great. I'm just trying to find, there's plenty of outlets for music. It's
it's good that you're making some space, because it does seem like life throws opportunities at you, not one at a time, but all at once. Yeah. It gets a little crazy sometimes. So
it is. It's like it all happens at once.
Any projects on the horizon with your sisters, for instance?
Ooh, no, not that I've talked to them about. No, that's a good idea though.
Any other famous musicians out there that you'd really like to work with?
I actually had this question the other day in an interview that, because I talked about producing, and she was asking, what's your ultimate artist that you'd like to work with? And I haven't thought about it like that. Sarah Bareilles and I have talked about writing at some point, but we just haven't. Sarah McLachlan and I got together and we started to write a few songs, but we never finished them. But that's okay. She's going to be going for, forever and ever. So we'll try again. I don't know. I'm still in, as much music as I'm doing, I still feel like I'm in a bit of a recovery phase of like, whatever the next thing I do, I really have to be very inspired by it because I do tend to throw myself in 110%. So as a growing up, I'm trying to, learn and, make sure make the right decisions and say yes to the right things because I do know that that is my tendency to just like get
Go
involved
for
with
it.
something. Yeah. If I'm gonna do it, I'd really do it. So
So one last question. This is kind of about the music biz and
yeah.
how it's changed so much. And you've sort of, in your career, from being a label artist to an indie artist, you seem to have made that transition successfully. How much of that, or um, let's see, how do I phrase this? Has your community of friends here, there in Nashville, how much has that played a part in you being able to move on in the indie world?
Well, I mean, I guess they play a huge role, and they came along at the right time. I've always had friends in Nashville, and but there was I was part of a touring group called 10 out of 10, and I was asked to do that right around the time that I had just gotten out of my record deal and was kind of terrified of the thought of starting again and starting from scratch, and releasing that album by myself. And it really just showed me, I didn't know half the people on that tour, the other artists that were on it. But some of them have become my best friends in Nashville, and that was a huge support to go out with. They were mostly there was a mixture of people of artists. Some were just signed, some were in the same place as me where they were getting out of a deal. Some people wanted a deal. Some people had no desire to be on a record label, and it was fascinating. We were all doing the same things, and we were all just passionate about music, and wanted to do this tour just for fun. And I mean, that's a testament to Nashville. It's a great community. If you get the right circle of friends, definitely to have that support and to talk to people that are going through the same things, and releasing an album on your own is a lot of work, but it's nice to know there's other people out there doing it too. And you know, even if to just bitch about it for a little bit.
Well, listen, this is time for my editorial comments. Um, I recommend to anybody listening to this interview to pick up any one or all of Butterfly Boucher's albums. Flutterby, Scary Fragile, her third album just called Butterfly Boucher, and Happy Birthday Flutterby. Yes. But this woman should be a major star, and I think would have been in any other previous musical era. She's got it all.
I think maybe I would have had a chance back in the 80s.
She has a great voice, the instrumental chops, and that elusive gift of melody. So keep your ears open, take a listen to her stuff, and look for her when she goes back out on tour again, and go up and say hi, because she's a really sort of down-to-earth and lovely person. So thank you for being with us here, Butterfly.
My absolute pleasure.